You know, it's a good day when Eggert has that big of a smile on his face when I walk in. It's probably, since I was the Cranes Newsmaker of the Year, the subscriptions are up. People are reading Cranes. It's going really well. And a lot of people think that it should be the Cranes Detroit Chamber Conference. Like instead of the Detroit Chamber, it should be the Cranes Mackinac Conference. They have the Cranes House there, which truthfully, I think more people go to the Cranes House than go to the conference programming. That's going to change, though. I don't know if you heard this. WWJ reported that Gretchen Whitmer, Matt Hall, Mary Sheffield are all speaking at the Mackinac Conference this year, along with Mike Pence, who they probably will have low attendance for his speech, but people will be at the Cranes House during that speech. That'll be a real snoozer. But no, I think there's a lot of hype building for my speech at the Mackinac Conference, and I opted out of doing any panel, and they're just giving me my own time to speak by myself, which is going to be good. We're going to have a great speech there. And soon it'll probably be the Cranes Mackinac Conference, but right now it's still the Detroit Chamber Conference. But I will say, I'm joking a little bit, but just the way Cranes has really taken advantage of that has been impressive. And, that's why their Newsmaker of the Year is the most predominantly and highly respected Newsmaker of the Year. And when I won that, it was very clear that was the consensus, really, of everybody. Everyone agreed that I was Newsmaker of the Year once we got that, and but it's going to be good. There's been a lot of great stories. You're doing a great job, David. So keep it up. I'd have a smile on my face too if I was doing as well as you are in Cranes. So it's really well done. Anyway, hopefully everyone is less tired than they were. I was not tired, but everyone else was at our last press conference, which was 11:30 at night. Those Democrats, they just couldn't stop talking, and so finally we just had the press conference, and you all came, at least most of you, so we appreciate that. But really pleased with the way the House Republicans came together and got a budget done last week. One of you reported that it was the earliest that the House had done the budget, I think in 15 years. You got to go back, I think, 15 years to see the last time the House did a budget this early. And I would really give that credit to the unity, the great unity that we're seeing under my leadership with the House Republicans. We came together, we ironed out any differences, and we put together a great budget through the House last week in a very unified fashion. You look at the recent Democrat Party convention, you see a lot of division in the Democrat Party right now. Very interesting to look at their convention and all the controversy around the voting. It's very interesting to look at that, and then to look at who votes for who. They don't have a secret ballot in the Democrat Party. They put that right in their rules that the Democrat Party bosses can see who voted for who. It's just very interesting to watch all the division over there on the Democrat side, but that's why I watched that convention and I said, we need better leaders for the Democrat Party, and we brought back a great former Democrat leader, former Speaker Joe Tate. We brought him back and said, we're going to have Joe Tate lead the Democrats in the House in this budget so we can get a deal by July 1. And I think with me and Joe Tate working together with Governor Whitmer, we'll get that deal. We'll get it very easily. It'll be a lot of work, but I make it look easy for you guys. It'll be a lot of work, but you will all report that it was very easy because that's how it will look on the surface. As I mentioned, now I think the Democrats, they passed a budget yesterday. It was highly controversial, their budget, a lot of controversy. We saw a lot of those speeches out there. You look at the Democrats who raid the rainy day fund. They don't make big investments in local governments and in roads and in public safety. They don't do that. They try to just patch it all together, take money from the rainy day fund, raise some fees, and call it a day. That's basically what they're trying to do. I'm not going to let them do that. I think when we get in the room with me and Joe Tate and Governor Whitmer, we're going to make a deal that actually invests in local governments. It invests in roads, more money for roads, so we can keep building on the momentum of the great $2 billion deal I made with Gretchen Whitmer, the biggest roads deal in Michigan's history. But we're going to keep investing in local roads and bridges. We're going to do that in this budget. We're going to make big investments in public safety through the Public Safety Trust Fund, which is a deal that I made with Mike Duggan to invest more in local cities and communities in their public safety. So we're going to get a budget that makes investments. We don't have to make cuts. We can make investments. And the way we do it is the way the House Republicans did it, which is by looking at what the real dollar spent is in every one of these line items. What's amazing is if you just go to what the actual dollar spent is, what the actual need is, you can save $2 billion in this budget without cutting anything they're actually spending money on. Now, you do have to eliminate the 3,300 ghost employees. Those are the fake workers that are costing Michigan taxpayers $500 million a year. They never list the positions. They never try to fill the positions. They just keep the money to pad department programming. We've seen them accumulate a $12 billion slush fund through practices like this, over budgeting every year, padding a budget with fake workers, ghost employees. And what happens is they're making $600 million a year of interest off of you, the taxpayer. And so all we have to do is budget the amount of money they're actually spending, and we can cut $2 billion from the budget without impacting anything. And that's how we can make big investments in local governments, in education. We can make big investments in literacy. We can make big investments in our public safety and in roads. We can invest more in roads. And I've been trying to tell the other politicians, which I'm not, I'm an outsider, but I've been trying to tell them, why don't we make more investments every year in roads instead of waiting 10 years and then having to do very drastic things to catch up? We could actually get ahead of the curve if we took waste, fraud, and abuse every year from the budget and permanently dedicated that to roads. So we're gradually increasing funding for roads every year. You know, we could, and then if you don't do it all at once, you'll actually get more value, because when you infuse $2 billion at once, a lot of people say the costs of the projects go up. If you do it gradually and people have the time to ramp up, you won't see as much of the increase in the cost of these bids. So it actually is a very smart plan. Maybe we'll brand that one too. We'll come up with a name for it. We can also invest in hubs, the Hall Universal Breakfast and Lunch in Schools program, which is really catching on across the state. You know, unlike the Democrats in the Senate and the governor, we don't have to take breakfast and lunch away from some of the kids. We can give breakfast and lunch to all of the kids, and we're going to make sure it's healthy breakfast and lunch. That's HUBS, the Hall Universal Breakfast and Lunch in Schools. We're going to have healthy breakfast and lunch for all of our kids, and it's going to be universal, which means all of the schools, just like it is now. But the Democrats, they want to take away from the kids. They want to take away lunches and breakfast from many of the kids to pay for other Democrat priorities in the budget. We're not going to let them do that. We're not going to. So I'm very pleased. And then we're going to get rid of a lot of the wasteful grants. We're going to stop the welfare that Michigan State University and other state departments are giving to illegal aliens. We're going to cut that from the budget. We're going to make it end. And we're going to really eliminate a lot of the wasteful IT programs that go on for year after year after year, spending hundreds of millions of dollars with no end in sight. We're going to do that too, and very excited. You know, we all know that I saved Medicaid last year with Greg Van Werkum. We made some very minor changes to our state's Medicaid law, and we ensured that Medicaid funding will be 100% intact this year. That is a fact, 100% fact. Medicaid, we're getting all the federal money this year, and that's because of a great deal I made to save Medicaid coverage for many people across the state. And we know that the cost of Medicaid is growing. Just in this House budget that we passed last week, we put $1.2 billion more into Medicaid than last year. And the reason for that is because the caseloads keep going up. More and more people are using Medicaid. Now, most of those people that are using Medicaid are eligible and they're people that the program is intended for. But unfortunately, we're seeing a lot of fraud in our Medicaid system. And that's why the House budget, we're really working to crack down on that fraud. Both in Medicaid and also in the food stamp program as well. We want food stamps available to the people that are truly needy, that the program was intended for. We also want Medicaid available for the people that are truly needy and it was intended for. That's why we need to invest money to ensure that Michigan is prepared to implement work requirements and also is ready to find the fraud and eliminate all of the fraud in our Medicaid system and our food stamp programs so that these programs continue to be fully funded and available in the future for people that they were intended for. So it's, you know, I saved Medicaid, but I'm going to continue to ensure that Medicaid is available for everyone that is supposed to receive it, as well as food stamps. Now I do know I'm actually, you know, I'm getting an award, by the way, from the Food Bank Council. They're giving me an award. I'll bring that soon for all the work I did last year with Governor Whitmer to ensure that all of our food banks were ready for some of the higher demands we saw at times last year when the federal government shut down. We were able to make sure that we had the food banks ready and staffed and with the resources available to take care of the need that was there at the time. So I'm appreciative that the Food Bank Council is giving me their highest award very soon. But just to go through what we're doing here, you know, the first problem we're seeing with these welfare programs is the self-attestation, where you just fill out a form and you say, yes, I'm eligible. Maybe they say, I have zero income. Nobody verifies that, and then they start getting payments immediately. And when you go over time, if nobody checks that, you know, over time, they're continuing to get these benefits, in some cases for many years, without anyone checking to see if they're eligible and if they're a U.S. citizen. So we, in our budget, are going to ensure that those checks are conducted, that you know, you have to upload these documents, upload proof of citizenship, upload evidence of eligibility, so that we protect our welfare systems to ensure that people are getting it that are eligible. And this is why the RX Kids program doesn't work, because there's no income eligibility requirement, there's no verification of citizenship, there's no limits on what the money can be spent on. We see many people who spend it on abuse. We can't call it fraud because they're allowed to do it. That's the difference. If you took money that you received through the cash assistance program or food stamps, and you spent that money on things you're not supposed to, like drugs and alcohol, that would be fraud. But under RX Kids, it's not fraud because RX Kids permits it. That's why it's abuse. It's abuse because I think the average taxpayer would agree you shouldn't be taking welfare and spending it on drugs. But it's abuse. It's not fraud because they're allowed to do it under the Michigan State University RX Kids program. Michigan State is letting them do it. We're going to put a stop to new funding for that program this year in the budget. I'd like to see us instead fully fund other cash assistance programs that have eligibility requirements, that verify citizenship, and also ensure that you're spending the money on things that are going to make you healthier and help your family. So we're going to do that too. We see other, what happens is when the states are not doing these cross checks, they're not looking at the U.S. Postal Service to see if people moved out of state. They're not looking at death records. They're paying out welfare benefits under a lot of these programs that, Medicaid and food stamps and cash assistance. They could be paying out to people that are dead and people that live in other states. And what we're seeing is people will move to Ohio or another state. Say they move to California, probably a better example. They move to California, they set up for welfare in California, and then they're receiving welfare in Michigan and in California. We can stop that if we require and really pressure our state government to do those appropriate checks to stop these people that are receiving welfare in multiple states. I'm just looking through the other ones. I'd like to see work requirements. I'd like to see Michigan cooperate with working requirements so that we ensure that the people receiving welfare in the state of Michigan are seeking education, they're volunteering their time, or they're working. If you're an able-bodied adult in Michigan, you shouldn't be receiving welfare for years and years and years, living in your parents' basement playing video games. We can't do that anymore. We got to end that. And the reason is because we really want to protect these programs to ensure they're still fully funded and available to everyone who needs them as the costs continue to go up for the taxpayers. We want to limit the retroactive eligibility of these welfare programs and hold the department accountable to ensure they're complying with the federal provisions here. They'll ask for the welfare and then they'll get months and months and months of past welfare. So we want to ensure that the state is following the federal law on that and limiting the retroactive payments. And then also what we're seeing the Department of Health and Human Services going out and getting waivers from the federal government to expand the cost of these Medicaid programs, all on their own. One example we saw of this was a couple years ago during the Democrat trifecta, where the DHHS just went out and started covering all the GLP-1 products, and that actually increased the cost. I think it was $250 million a year that it increased the cost of Medicaid for the state. So those are the kind of things where when they go out and they make these changes, and often they need federal waivers to do it, they need federal approval, they're going to have to get legislative approval to do that, and these costs are going to have to be neutral. We want to see if they make changes to the Medicaid program, they should be budget neutral, and they should get legislative approval to do it, because ultimately we're the ones that have to pay for it. They go out, they expand the cost of Medicaid, all on their own, seeking that from the federal government, and then we're having to pay for it. So we got to limit that. That should be a more collaborative process where everybody talks about it on the front end and agrees, and then we go out and seek those expansions to welfare programs. So I think, and then, you know, we really want to see the state verifying eligibility twice a year. That's what's required under the federal law, and we're going to push to ensure that the state is following that. We don't want to be paying out for months and months and months. But, you know, what's really shocking to me is the more I've dug into this, how states just aren't doing the checks. I take it to, like, I assumed when I started this that people actually looked at how much money was spent in the budget and then based the next year's budget on how much was actually spent. Like, I had some university presidents with me yesterday, and I asked them, I said, at your colleges and universities, do you look at what was spent last year, and then where you over budgeted, do you adjust your budget so that you can provide other important resources to your students the next year? And all of them said, yes, of course we do that. I said, they don't do that in Lansing. They don't ever look at what was spent last year. They just start with whatever the budgeted amount is, and then they go from there. So I think it's really common sense to just go to what the real dollar spent is, and then we can make investments where they're needed. It's kind of too easy to understand for the politicians here to do it. It's amazing. Let me see here. I'm looking through the other things here. I'm really happy with how HEAT is going, the Hall Ethics, Accountability, and Transparency Plan. And you all saw Paris Hilton thinks very highly of HEAT. She came up with her own kind of HEAT 2, dealing with the humane transportation of kids. And I was really happy we were able to work with Paris Hilton and Cam Cavett yesterday to move legislation through the House, bipartisan, that will help more humanely treat these kids and that are in difficult situations as they're transported. So we were very happy to do that. HEAT is catching on, even though some of you won't talk about HEAT. I'm happy that Paris Hilton did. You know, and then I'm very happy. Oh, by the way, I wanted to talk about this in our, we're getting overwhelming praise for the House budget. We saw that from the Michigan Association of Public School Academies. They say the House education budget funds all students fairly and equitably. We're valuing every learner's choice. So I'm very happy to see that. You saw the Michigan Association of Ambulance Services come out very positive on the House budget. They say the budget approved by the Michigan House makes smart investments that will let our agencies do what they do best, provide excellent pre-hospital care to Michigan residents. That's really important. I bet you didn't see this coming. We were praised by Michigan Works. They applaud the House budget's inclusion of $40 million for the Going Pro Talent Fund, a signal that Michigan remains serious about competing for talent and keeping businesses here. This is critical to Michigan's ability to close the skills gap that large and small businesses say is holding them back from filling open positions, and to ensure that Michigan workers and businesses can maintain momentum after years of investment in building one of the nation's top workforce programs. Democrats in the Senate, they don't fund Going Pro. We were praised by the Michigan Manufacturers Association. They were very pleased to see the Going Pro Talent Fund restored at a level higher than last fiscal year in the House budget. We want to thank Speaker Matt Hall, Appropriations Chair Ann Bolin, and Subcommittee Chair Nancy Jenkins Arno for their support of a vitally important training program that supports critical advanced manufacturing jobs. And of course, Senate Democrats, they don't fund that. So There's a lot more praise coming in. I don't see it in the stories, but it's out there, and we're going to continue to highlight it. But there's a lot more. It's rolling in. I would bet since I started this press conference, Gideon, we probably got 2 or 3 more. I mean, there's so many positive endorsements coming in of the House budget. They're looking at this and they're saying, wow, we can invest in roads, we can invest in talent, we can invest in education, we can invest in local governments, public safety, and all we have to do is go to the real dollar spent. We basically don't have to cut anything. We can do that. So very pleased to see all the praise coming in. And I know with these independent colleges, I was with them yesterday, they love what we're doing. They think it makes a lot of sense, and we're protecting important scholarships that go to Michigan students. So they see that, and many others do. And we don't have to take anything from the rainy day fund. We don't have to raise any taxes or fees. We don't have to do any of it. You know, we're investing heavily in literacy too, much more than the Democrats propose. I'm very pleased that Governor Whitmer has talked about literacy. And remember, there's 3 pieces here if you go to what Mississippi did. And people talk about Mississippi because that's the state that was one of the lowest states. That's now one of the best states for the kids reading. And I want to give a shout out to all of our 4th graders that are doing their M-STEP right now. Good luck. You know, I know one of them, and that's a tough test, but it's really important that they do that test so we can measure their scores. They're all watching on House TV, you know, hopefully. So, and by the way, under my leadership, the ratings of House TV are way up. That is true. And you see now we have the subscribe button on the main page, so hopefully you guys click on it and subscribe. I've been investing a lot of time in turning around House TV. You see the great work I've been doing with the House sergeants. You know, I don't think the morale has ever been higher. It's interesting, under the Democrat leadership, we had a big problem retaining the sergeants, and we were probably at the lowest number of House sergeants that we'd had in decades. I've boosted it. We're fully staffed and we're growing. Much more sergeants than we had under Democrat leadership. And then Beth told me the Democrats want to cut the sergeants. Isn't that funny? You know, the reason is a lot of sergeants don't want to work in the Senate because of the leadership there. It's not very good leadership. So anyway, you look at all the nonpartisan departments, the carpenters, you look at the clerks. We had major turnover of House fiscal members, staff, and clerks and everything under Tate. You know, you look, I mean, there's no organization up here at the Capitol that's really humming the way that the House is. We have probably the highest morale we've had since I've been here. Many people want to work for the House in all the nonpartisan jobs, in the partisan jobs. It's really good. And I don't know if you know this, I have the lowest turnover. We'd have to go back. I mean, I haven't looked past I came here, but if you go further than that, we probably have the lowest turnover. I would say in at least 10 years, lowest turnover. And it's a really amazing thing. And I've kept most of this team together for 4 years. You know, when Tate was there and some of the others, they couldn't keep them together for a year. We've kept this core team together for 4 years. You know, we went through the minority together. We won back the House, and they're still here. And we're beating everybody. You know, the Democrats are still finding wins that I got in this budget that they didn't know about until now. It's kind of funny. I told the Democrats, I said, next time we make a deal, maybe you should look at what happens in year 2 and year 3. They're all shocked that by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse and dedicating it to roads permanently in the greatest budget deal on roads that's ever been made, and by eliminating taxes on tips, overtime, Social Security, and giving that back to the taxpayers, you have a revenue shortfall the next year. That's the whole point. And we're going to make government more efficient this year. We'll probably cut government by another 1% this year, and that's a good thing. We should keep making this government more efficient, and we should keep providing the important public services to people that need it. And it's funny, you know, these Democrats, they're looking at the budget again because we're doing another budget deal, and they're finding things in there. Go, wow, I didn't know we gave that away last year. Well, yeah, we got a great deal. So anyway, we're very happy about the way the budget came out last year. I like where things are. I think we're in a good position this year. I'm hopeful the Democrats will agree to similar framework as last year. If you remember, when we did the budget last year, it was probably 4 months of fighting about framework and then 2 days of doing the budget. We did the entire budget in 48 hours last year, and if we can get the framework done earlier, then we'll have plenty of time to do the budget. And I'm very pleased that I'll be able to, you know, personally participate in all of the subcommittees, so I can really put my thumbprint on all of those, and we'll get even more wins this year. In each of the subcommittees. Last year, because it was so condensed, I only personally participated in a handful of the subcommittees, and the rest were handled by the subcommittee chairs and the department heads. But if I'm there, I think we'll get a much better deal, because Democrats have nobody in their roster that can match up with me, and we'll win the negotiations and get important wins for the people of Michigan. But anyway, heat has been going very well. I saw, you know, when the Democrats were there, it was probably $2 billion a year in pork, sometimes a little more than $1 billion. You saw the House budget. We put $150 million of projects in there, and I like where we're at. I mean, you know, you had a hearing on all of these. You know, we have information on them so people can go look them up and vet them and learn about them before they go through a later part of the process. And what was important to me as we go through this is that I wanted to put the projects in the House budget. What you could do is you could just wait till the end and do them in the final budget. I wanted to put them in the House budget because I wanted people to see them. Give us more time to vet them. And I want people to know what we're fighting for in the final budget. So you can look at that list and you can say, okay, these are the projects that the House Republicans and Joe Tate are advocating for. And we can then go in and we can try to get those things in the final budget. I'm hopeful that we won't see all these other projects show up out of nowhere and you say, well, where did these come from? I think the way it should go is the House puts what they're fighting for in the House budget, the Senate puts what they're fighting for in the Senate budget, and then the final product is some combination of that. That's how it really should work. So we're going that way. I didn't see what the Democrats did there. But I hope they take a similar path, because really where we should get to in the negotiations is the House and the Senate, and then you're negotiating things that we all see on the front end. We're negotiating, not we do a marketing budget and then we get into the back room and then we pull out the real budget and then we negotiate. That's not the way it should work, and hopefully it won't this year. I'll stop there and see if there are any questions. Go ahead, Beth.
Representative Zimmerman last week introduced a bill that appears to be the service tax bill, but it doesn't, from what I've seen reading it, it doesn't define which services will be taxed. When do you guys plan to do it?
Yeah, so you know, we call it a luxury tax. We're going to tax the lobbyists, and we're going to tax the robocalls and the telemarketers and the private jets and the limousines. I'm looking forward to getting the final list in place. And what I'm doing is I'm working with the Treasury. We're going to bring this list to the Treasury, work through with the Treasury Department. The try to come to a consensus. What's really important in the bills, including the Merriman bill, is that the school aid fund is held harmless. We want to ensure that the schools are fully funded. We want to fund our local governments. And the way I would describe this is when you really get into the weeds, we're making estimates with the best information that we have on each one of these items. And I'm listing them out for you, by the way. And what we want to see is what Treasury's estimates are, because they have additional information. And I want to kind of forge consensus so that when we put forward the final plan and have a deal for major property tax relief for the people of Michigan, that there's consensus that our schools are fully funded and that our local governments are going to be all right. So we're forging that consensus. Contrary to what I saw some people say on Off the Record, I fully expect property tax reform to be part of a budget deal. I think that we're going to hopefully eliminate the state property tax, which will save the average taxpayer, I think it's $900 a year. I'd like to see us address the real estate transfer tax. I'd like to see us get rid of the personal property tax and to force the utilities to lower their rates by $1 billion, which will wipe out the last 3 years of rate increases. And then we're going to hold them to that for at least 2 years. So we're going to make some big moves on property tax, and I think that'll be part of this budget. And I. I think I've been very upfront about what we're doing. I mean, every week I come here with a list of what we're going to tax, and you've all reported on it. So we're working through it. But, I'd say the big principle here is you don't want to tax things that, like on the, for example, we don't tax food on the goods side. We don't want to tax essential goods and services. So, for example, healthcare. We're not going to tax healthcare services, for example. But when we start getting into some of those luxury items, I think if we could deliver huge tax relief, we're talking about more than $900, and we're talking about at least $250 on your utility bill. And in order to offset the loss for schools and local governments, if we can tax some of the luxury services, I think that's a good thing. And so I'm laying out to you the things that I think we should include in a deal, and we'll get Treasury's input and we'll make a deal. And I think it'll be a very good deal, and people are going to save a lot of money. I mean, you reporters, you will save a lot of money on this deal. It'll be a good deal for you, and it'll be a good deal for the people of Michigan. Now we might tax the newspaper publishing service, but you guys will still come out ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
It appears that the bills to redefine terrorism at House bill
Yeah.
Can you confirm that? Maybe you speak to topic bill?
Yeah, I'm not familiar with it. I saw a report somewhere where somebody said that I pulled it. I wasn't aware of it getting pulled. It's at a lower committee. It's at the Judiciary Committee. And I read a report that said that it was pulled, and somebody gave me credit for that, which I'm grateful. A lot of people give me credit, which I'm not the media, but everybody else does. I mean, certainly the food banks do, and the respected transparency organization does. But I don't know. I'll have to look into it. I saw it got shelved. I wasn't involved in shelving it, so we'll have to look at what happened there. Yeah, go ahead. Well, we had testimony today, and I heard it went very well on the property tax cuts that we want to make. That people are going to get real relief from these property tax cuts when we get rid of the state property tax and when we lower their utility bills by at least $250 a year by forcing the utilities to roll back $1 billion, wiping out their last 3 years of rate increases. People are going to get real tax relief, and it's going to matter a lot to them. So we're moving forward on those bills, and we're also bringing our list of luxury services to the Treasury Department, and we're working through that because it's really important to me that we have a deal that goes alongside the budget that gives people at least $900 a year on average of property tax relief, and also funds our schools and local governments. Yeah, go ahead, Remington.
Gas prices have just shot up to $5 in Michigan, and occasionally they come down. Is the legislature, or you think of anything that would help Michigan drivers at this time, possibly a gas tax dollars?
Well, we made a great deal to invest over $2 billion a year in roads every year. They're calling it the biggest roads deal in Michigan's history. We did that largely by cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in the budget. We saw the marijuana wholesale tax. And what we're doing for the first time is we're dedicating all of the money collected at the pump to roads. For years, I heard from people say, why are they collecting one of the highest gas taxes in the country and they're not putting it all into roads? And so I would say in the past, when we'd collect so much money in gas tax and very little of it went to roads, there was a good argument for gas tax holiday because the money wasn't even going to the roads. Now the money is going to the roads, and I think it's really important that we continue to make those investments in roads. Something I hear a lot from people across our state was that we need to improve our local roads. We came together, the governor and I, and we made a deal to fix the local roads, and we need to stick with that, and we actually need to invest more in the roads. That's why the House Republican budget, we increase road funding again. We want to take more money and permanently dedicate it to roads every year. So we continue to fix our roads. Now people are actually paying a little less in gas tax because of the deal I made under this new gas tax where all the money goes to the roads at the current prices. They're actually paying a little less as part of that deal. So that's where we're at there. But I want to see us continue to get I want to see us fix our roads and bridges and infrastructure, and that's how we fund it, and so we need to stick with it and see that improvement happen. Yeah, go ahead.
On healthcare and SNAP federal programs coming through the state, state officials argue essentially they need additional resources, staffing, to keep up with changes like paperwork requirements. The budget includes staff, but a smaller amount of funding and FTEs for work requirement implementation compared to the administration's recommendation. I know you mentioned it, but talk a little bit about, if you could, the specifics of that and how that allocation and FTE number decided on, and how you can really do so balance what they say is the needs of your push to cut down on what you see as wasteful spending and staff members.
Sure. So I support making investments, right, because it makes sense. If you're actually going to start checking to see if people are eligible for welfare, something they're not doing now for the most part, or they're doing very inconsistently, I accept the argument that you're going to have to make investments. You're going to have to spend some money and make sure you have the personnel in place to verify people are eligible for the welfare they're receiving. So I accept that premise. And that's why when our members went through this at the subcommittee level, they looked at what are all of these people that the Whitmer administration wants to hire, what are they all doing? And what we did is we funded where we see the usefulness of that plan. So what I'm trying to say is if the people are working on verifying eligibility, then we're funding them. But we're not funding all the additional waste that they're sweeping in in under that. So they say, we're hiring all these people for this purpose, and then when you really dive into it, that's not what they're doing. They're using this purpose to fund this and then a bunch of other extra stuff. And so what we did is we got rid of the extra stuff and we're funding what actually would be needed for verifying eligibility. And then we cut out all the extra stuff that really isn't the purpose of what they say it is. And they do this all over government. I mean, that's how you over budget by $2 billion a year is they create 3,300 ghost employees and they keep them every year, and every year it's $500 million a year they're getting in fake workers that they never list the positions and they pad the departments. So we're not letting that kind of practice go on here where they're trying to, whether they're ghost employees or whether they're extra projects here that have nothing to do with actually verifying the eligibility of people that are seeking welfare. And that's why you see we invest heavily in fraud prevention. We invest heavily in checking eligibility for work requirements. And then we also put in here all the things I talked about earlier in detail that ensure the proper checks are being made. We're giving them the direction on the proper checks, the proper cross checks, checking for dead people, checking for people that moved out of state, actually verifying citizenship and eligibility and income thresholds. And when we get there and we're actually negotiating a deal with the governor and the departments, and they come to us and say, hey, all right, we agree to the things you're proposing, and this is what we need to do it, then we'll make that deal. But at this point in the process, we looked at where they're at and we tailored it to what we think is actually going toward people that are actually checking for the eligibility under Medicaid. That's what we tried to do. Yeah.
I was just wondering your opinion on the Michigan Supreme Court recent ruling to prevent ICE agents from arresting people around courthouses and in courthouses. If you just have any thoughts on that?
When I didn't see it, did it come out today or yesterday, recently?
It was recently.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't see the ruling, so I'll have to take a look at it and get back to you. Yeah, go ahead.
I know it's been a day since the past their budget, but have you started looking at it to see what areas you can negotiate with them on? Have you picked it apart and see what you want to fight for? And is there anything that you would say is a non-starter that you've seen so far?
Well, I walk into every one of these budget negotiations with a plan. Based on my experience, I'm not sure you could say the same about Winnie Brinks. Often when we enter into negotiations, she seems to have no plan. I've learned to not fault her for that, though, because she's representing a very radical and divided group of people. I mean, look at Mallory McMorrow. I mean, she doesn't even want to be in Michigan. I saw she wants to be in California. So, these are the type of people that Winnie Brinks are trying to get to vote yes on a budget. That can be hard. We're looking at it. I have a plan. I've laid out a lot of the plan, and what we've shown is how we can deliver better services to the public, and we can do even better for our local governments, public safety, education, roads, and infrastructure. And we can do that just by ending the practice of over budgeting $2 billion a year, getting rid of all the ghost employees, cutting waste, fraud, and abuse from the budget. And what we can do is we can provide an even more efficient government than last year and provide better services. And we do not have to raid the rainy day fund to do it, and we don't have to raise any taxes and fees. So I would expect that the Democrats will drop the taxes and fees, and they will drop the attempts to raid the rainy day fund. And when they do that, we'll probably get a deal very easily. Well, let's say this, it'll look easy, it'll be a lot of work, but it will appear easy to you, and it'll happen on time. Yeah.
Next week, the Supreme Court, our Supreme Court, will hear oral arguments in the Bills case. Are you
Well, yeah, I think, it's very clear. We went through the House journals. I think Fink is still looking through the House journals, and we haven't found an example of this happening in Michigan's history. That thorough legal review is still happening in the background, even though I don't talk about it much. And so, yeah, our hope is that the Michigan Supreme Court will see that, what is this? It's been a year and a half now. And, to go back in time and force Joe Tate to present these bills to the governor. When the prior legislature ends, they go sine die, then, the next legislature begins. And it's unfortunate that Joe Tate didn't present those bills, but we're not presenting them because the body voted. I mean, you saw that. The entire body voted to instruct us not to present those bills. And I looked over and I saw some Democrats voting the same way because they get it that, if you play this thing out to the extreme, it doesn't make sense. I mean, at what point in time does presenting bills from the past end, let's say this case dragged out for much longer and it's 5 years later. Do you present the bills? 20 years later, 100 years later, do you present the bills? So the body felt, and I think it makes sense when the legislature ends, your opportunity to present bills ends. Go ahead.
If the Supreme Court does not agree with the premise and it sets that precedent, is that a dangerous precedent? So that's this potentially present bills years after the session.
Yeah, I think it would be, it wouldn't make sense for there to be a precedent that you can present bills years later. I mean, let's say, for example, we have Governor Whitmer, and we pass bills now, and Governor Whitmer says she's going to veto them. So then the House just holds on to the bills until there's a future governor that will sign it. Maybe it'll be the next governor. Maybe it'll be 3 governors from now, and then they present the bills. I don't think that makes a lot of sense to do it that way. I don't think it makes a lot of sense for us to pass a bill now and then hold it and present it the day after Governor Whitmer leaves office because the next governor will sign it. It should really line up, right? The people elected a House and a Senate and a governor. If you pass the bills, you present them, right? If they choose not to present them, which is something they can choose to do, they can choose not to present them for whatever reason. We saw that happen before, by the way. You remember when Winnie Brinks refused to present some bills for many months to leverage Joe Tate to move some legislation. And then when he finally moved the legislation, she presented the bills. Presentment is something that a lot of these people use as a negotiation tool as part of the legislative process. And we saw that leveraging him to get some economic development bills to move, I think early in 2024. It was, so they were bills that passed in 23, and they were leveraging him on 24 because they wanted him to do some things in the budget in 24, and then they released the bills. Or it was economic development in early 24. So that's a pretty common tactic that they use. I don't do that, but others do that. They leverage on presentment. So, there's an option to present or not present. For whatever reason, Joe Tate chose not to present. And then the legislature ended, and the next legislature started, and we just said, well, we're not going to present because we can't. And then we put it before the body, and they voted to say, don't present. The legislature can't do this. And then the second precedent that would be set that doesn't make sense, we have a separation of powers, just like how the governor couldn't shut down the legislature during COVID, because there's a separation of powers. She couldn't control the legislative branch. Likewise, the Supreme Court cannot, and the courts cannot run the day-to-day operations of the legislature either. And so I think protecting those separations is important. You always see these different branches of government try to creep a little bit and expand their power. We saw Governor Whitmer try to do that when she unilaterally declared that the government would remain open with no budget. Remember that? That was what, we see that all the time. And it's really, I think, critical that the courts see that these internal operations of the legislature are not in the purview of the courts. But we'll see what they decide. Any other questions? All right. Go ahead, Mr. Eggert.
To follow up on the luxury tax,
Yeah.
how difficult has that process been to just kind of get numbers to know this is how much we're being taxed on? If it's kind of some of these industries, some of the services that never
Right. So we have some good information, I would say. I'm trying to, every one of these different services, luxury services, have like a certain code. And so you can look at the code in the, wherever these codes exist. I think it's some kind of IRS code. And then you can look at the IRS code, you can look at the service, you can look at the definitions under that service, and you can see essentially how much economic activity or revenue is associated with that service. I do think, though, in order to get it precise, I think we really will benefit from the collaboration with the Treasury Department to really, it's kind of like a consensus revenue estimating conference, right, where you get kind of more than one opinion. So I feel a little more confident in it, getting their feedback and coming to a consensus, because I really want to make sure the local governments are held, that they're taken care of, and that the schools are held harmless. It's really important. And I mentioned to you, I think it's like $18 billion is the value of all the services. We're looking at $5 billion if it were revenue neutral of services for the luxury service tax that would deliver major property tax relief to the people of Michigan. So we want to make sure we're all on the same page there, and I think we'll really benefit from the Treasury's input. Yeah, go ahead.
In your consideration of different possible services, would you consider college attendance a luxury? Like the providing college education, like taxes, fees?
Taxing, I'd have to go look at what we're doing. I don't recall that being part of the discussion. It gets really complicated because, like we were discussing the other day, like a newspaper is a good, it's not a service. But the newspaper publishing is a service. So when you're really breaking down these definitions, I want to make sure I'm speaking with, even though I was a tax chair, and I probably understand tax policy better than anyone in the legislature, it gets really complicated really fast, All right. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.